Welcome to our product presentation of our class 55552. This is our optimized workstation for top stitching waistbands. On the first slide of my presentation you can see the whole machine setting. So the machine is equipped with a class 274 sewing head, means a combination of needle feet, puller feet and a bottom feet. The machine has an shaped table, an ergonomic shaped table for fatigue sewing operation. We have a special curved table for the shape of the waistband, that means the shape of the trouser. Here on the left side you do see a rest table where we rest the trouser while stitching. So the machine is equipped with a sewing equipment for shadow stitching. This you can see here. This is one of the equipments which are available. So shadow stitching means we are stitching on the bottom side of the waistband. So that means if I do have here my trouser, we are talking about the operation of shadow stitching, means below the waistband. Alternatively, I can also change the sewing foot and I can top stitch on the waistband, means by 0.6 millimeter, for example. Performance on this machine is approximately 500 to 550 trousers in 8 hours working time. This always depends a little bit of the size of the trouser, the length of the seam and of course also the shape. So we are offering actually 3 different types of stitching methods on the machine. The first one is the stitching in the seam shadow with our standard sewing foot, which is an hinge compensating foot, which has a small edge guide inside the sewing foot. The edge guide is a little curved at the end, so the little curve at the end will lift up the waistband for the needle to stitch in the shadow. If this sewing foot is not so comfortable for the operator, that may happen if they are used to a half sewing foot, then we are offering here also for stitching in the seam shadow a sewing foot with a half sole, again also with a small edge guide here in front of the sewing foot. Has the same function, that means this sewing foot with this edge guide will guide below the waistband. We will lift up a little bit the edge of the waistband and we will stitch inside the seam shadow. The third sewing foot, which is available as an option on the machine, is for top stitching the waistbands. This is a standard hinge compensating foot, and here we do stitch 1.6 millimeter on the waistband edge. You do see perfectly here on these 2 pages, or on these 2 pictures, that we are using the machine with the puller feet. I mentioned it in the beginning already. The advantage here is that the puller is very close to the needle. So that means we are talking about here about 24 millimeter distance from needle to the puller. So that means while stitching, the puller can act on the stitching, on the seam. If the puller is too far away, we have a reaction on the seam, and this means no sewing result influence. So to put an influence on the seam, we are using this special puller feet close to the needle to have a perfect flat stitched waistband. One additional advantage on the machine is you can see here a device to adjust the foot stroke. So the foot stroke is very important if you change from thin to thick material, like summer and winter wear. If you have velvet or corduroy material, the material is so thick that the sewing foot in general would push the material in front of the sewing foot, and you get this slanted roping pleats in your waistband. To avoid this, and we are the only one worldwide who are offering this, we do have this foot stroke adjustment. So that means we can lower or higher the sewing foot position depending on the thickness of material. And this gives us, again, a perfect sewing result without any slanted roping pleats on the waistband. So the transport in this case, if I move my sewing foot up, will be done by the very close working puller feet behind the needle. So this is the short theoretical presentation, and now let's go to the machine and see the practical. So here we do have our 550-552. The sewing head, I have mentioned it already, it's our class 274. The 274 has a needle feet in combination with the puller feet and the bottom feet. So this 3 feeding systems helps to have a very nice flat sewing result. So on the machine we have the adjustment for the stitch length forward and backward. So here the stitch length, for example, is adjusted to 2.5 millimeter, and now I can also adjust the stitch length of the puller, or the transport length for the puller. So if the stitch length 2.5 for the bottom feet is adjusted, in general, depending on the material, we increase the stitch length a little longer than the bottom feet. So that means 2.5 bottom feet and maybe 3 or 3.5 millimeter transport feet for the puller, to make sure that we have a nice flat sewing result. So then we do have this special shaped table. I have enough space to work very close to the sewing area. I do have enough space to put on my trouser, which is where we have a special designed table here. It's an oval form, so we put on the trouser to stitch in an oval, in a round process. The advantage of stitching in a round process is that I do work in the shape I am wearing the trouser now afterwards. And this is the reason we are going for this special shaped oval table. Good, so then coming to the preparation of the waistband. So if we want to stitch in the seam shadow, we have to create a seam shadow. So that means the seam shadow means I have to create a little pleat here in the waistband. So that means the stitching, I will take a light material so it will be easier to see. If you attach the waistband, you do have the perforation where you normally stitch in, and the stitching should not be done in the middle of the perforation. It should be always done a little bit, best way would be a millimeter outside of the perforation, because then I do get, if I iron my garment, I do get this small pleat, means the small shadow in my waistband. So the function of the machine is like this. So I position this edge guide exactly below the waistband, and while stitching the edge guide will lift up in the area of the needle the waistband to stitch exactly in the waistband shadow. So I took a blue thread, and as you can see here, you do not see the blue thread because it is covered in the seam shadow, which is visible only if I lift up my shadow of the waistband. Okay, so this is the shadow seam. So, and as I mentioned before, in case this sewing foot is not so comfortable for the operator, we can change the sewing foot to a half sole sewing foot. So we are just changing it by one screw, and the operator can use the half sole one in case the operator is used to this. Another application could be that you change from thin material to thick material, and this means, for example, corduroy or velvet. If I use the same setting on the machine, you will definitely face a problem that the sewing foot is pushing the material in front of it and create some slanted roping pleats. To avoid this, you can feel that the machine is not really handling the material properly. So in this case, we have the adjustment here for the foot height stroke. So that means I can change the stroke of the foot height while stitching. So that means you can see it here now. If I turn this wheel to the maximum, I can lift it up as much as required. And this is the advantage, or this has the advantage, that the sewing foot does not push the material in front of it anymore. I get a much better sewing result. And again, we will remember, this one is unique. So we have here something which is not available on any other machine in the world. Even though if you would change the tension of the foot here, it will not have the same result, because here we are lifting the whole foot, means we are changing the stroke of the foot. So now I will set it now to a level for thicker material. I will take another piece here, stitch it again, and I will immediately feel that the pushing of the foot is now gone. The puller is pulling behind the needle, and this means it is transporting my material, and the foot touches only softly my material. As you can see here, the sewing result super flat, no slanted roping, nothing, a perfect flat stitched waistband. Now, it could be that you have the requirement to top stitch a waistband. This would be very easy. We just change the sewing foot to a top stitching sewing foot. Change back to the thin material, or to the material thickness you would like to have. And then we stitch the trouser waistband on top of the waistband by 1.6 millimeter margin. So you can see here, top stitch 1.6 millimeter margin. Okay, so Now I would like to show you why we do have this rest table. So if you have a long trouser, you have this rest table to rest the trouser on this table while we are stitching. So the trouser, especially for long trousers, they are not pulling always during the sewing process. So we start stitching and I can easily concentrate only this, on the sewing area, and the trouser does not pull on my, pull the material from the sewing area away. So I can easily work here very relaxed, and I can get a sewing result which is nice and flat. So this was our product presentation of class 552. We hope you enjoyed it. Please have a look on our homepage, on the product page of class 552. You will find this product presentation available for you. Thank you very much.